Hi, Debbie.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Happy divorce. I just wanted
Oh,
to-
you know what?
Huh.
Your happy divorce or my happy divorce?
Yours, right? Because the last time that I talked to you at a court date.
Yeah, that was a,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
it was audio. Nothing happened. I'm not done yet. March.
Oh, you just have a really long road, don't you?
Yeah. It's
Mine
ridiculous.
lasted forever too. So
Yeah,
I
stupid.
totally get that.
Yeah.
Hi, Jamie. And we have a Darcy. So you guys all know about the PPS, right?
No.
Professional Performance Standards. So basically, the most important thing about it is that everybody has their homework turned in on my IoT. The whole thing is worth 10 points, like the entire rubric is worth 10 points, and attendance is worth 5. So as long as you turned in everything, you already have almost a passing grade. So then it just gives you 1 point each for things like responsibility and attitude, behavior. So if you're, cussing me out, then you probably will get a 0 instead of a 1, unless you teach me new words. So,
Okay.
but that's just the kind of thing. So for you guys, all of you guys, knowing your names and faces like I do, you guys have nothing to worry about at all.
Okay.
I don't know how big a percentage of your grade is. I believe it's 20%, maybe. Like everything else is 80% combined, and then this is 20%. Anyways, it's like the smallest little piece of your grade, and yeah, you guys have nothing to worry about, I promise.
Okay.
So, yeah. I'm gonna wait just 1 more minute to see if anybody else comes.
Okay.
In the meantime, thank you so much if you took the personality test. I hope that was fun. I love those personality tests. They're like my favorite thing to do. It's like a hobby of mine. Wow. I just got an email. Sorry, I'm going to check my email really fast.
No worries.
It's a student. It is a student, but says she joined, but I don't see her. Okay, I'm going to try something I've never tried before on Zoom. I'm going to try to share a screen. So you guys let me know if you can see it. Give me thumbs up if you end up seeing a PowerPoint. And if not, then give me a thumbs down, okay? All right, here I go. Let's see what happens. Can you guys see anything yet? Yeah, PowerPoint, good. So if I just started this slideshow from the beginning. Now, do you guys see me too, or just the PowerPoint? You see me too?
Yeah, we see you
so
too.
Lucky. All right, there is another person. All right, we've got Trisha and hi guys. How's it going? Oh my gosh, so every word that I'm saying is going down on the subtitles. Can you guys see the subtitles too? All right, no swearing. I really, really mean it. Okay, so I'm gonna try this now then. I just really quick, this is just the slideshow of all of your little note cards that we've been doing. I don't know if you've been watching the PowerPoints, then you've seen all the note cards, and if not, you haven't, but these are the things that'll be on the test. And then I've got a couple pages of notes to cover things that are also for sure on the test that maybe aren't in the note cards. So does that sound good? Does anybody have any questions before we start? You guys can like type your questions if you don't want to ask any or whatever, but okay. So this is, of course, this final is not cumulative. It is only over stuff that that we've learned since the midterm. So you don't have a ton of stuff that you need to do. And quite frankly, this stuff is more interesting than before the midterm anyway, I think. All right, so first chapter is chapter 5, even though on the review guide it said it's chapter 8. That's because an older textbook that we had was chapter 8 for the motivation chapter. And in this textbook, it's actually chapter 5. So motivation first. So you will need to know all the theories of motivation. You'll need to know what motivation is. So any guesses? Or do you guys just want me to go through it? And you guys know this is open book, open notes. So I will occasionally throw in some page numbers for you too. So that way you guys can write it down on your study guide. And when you go through the test, you can find it. So motivation is the main force behind behavior. Makes sense, right? I think. And then we've got instinct. So this is the William James of the James Lang theory of emotions. And then he also has, he also has a theory of motivation, and his theory of motivation is on one of my little pages. Look, I marked all my pages to save time. It's not working so far. That's Maslow. All right, so if you go, well, this is just basically telling you what an instinct is. So William James was the first one to come up with instincts, or the idea of instincts. And the instinct is an innate impulse that directs behavior. He said that it was genetically predetermined. So that means like fated, right? Like we were born with that. Next, you will need to know the drive reduction theory of motivation. So the drive reduction theory basically it pushes us to drive everything to stay normal. It just makes us kind of motivated for the biological needs, which are food, clothing, shelter, or, you know, food, warmth, love, whatever that might look like. All right, then we've got arousal theories of emotion. So the arousal theories of motivation, I said emotion, I meant motivation. They suggest that each of us has an optimal level of arousal. Too much and we get overstimulated, not enough, we're super duper lazy. So this is one that kind of looks at the bell curve. The optimal level of arousal is somewhere in the middle there for almost everyone, but nobody has the same levels. So levels are individualized. So not everybody has the same level. Makes sense. All right. Incentives. And if you're a mother, you totally know what incentives are already because that's how you do things like potty train and get them to stop crying and things like that. And it works eventually. So an incentive is a pursuit of a goal or a desire that we want to fulfill. And we usually think of incentives as some sort of a reward for good behavior, right? That's usually what we do to get people motivated. It's like dangling that carrot. Okay, then we're going to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, that one, a lot of people got wrong on the quiz. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs looks like that triangle, right? It's the triangle that's broken up into 5 sections on the PowerPoint and like 7 sections in the book. But the most important part is that Maslow's saying you can't get to the top of that pyramid without climbing the stairs to get there first, basically. So he says you have to have the bottom part of the pyramid accomplished before you can get to the middle, and that part before you could get to the top. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs talks about basic level, which is like your physiological, biological needs. And then in the middle, it is, here we go, your basic needs, safety and security. And then your next level is physiological, food, water, warmth, rest. The top one, if you remember, is like your self-esteem and self-actualization. So Maslow says if you cannot get the safety and you can't get food, water, warmth, there's no way you'll ever reach self-actualization or good self-esteem. Of course, that's not necessarily correct because a lot of people can, feel pretty good about themselves no matter how safe they are or what have you. But just in general, that is his theory. All right. And then next we've got James again from William James and the Theory of Instincts. He's got a theory of emotion. And James Lang's theory of emotion is that it is 100% physiological. So that means it is all completely based on body actions, nervous system. Think about that. So it's all fast breathing or beating a fast heartbeat or sweating. He says that no matter what, that's what emotion is. Now that's not true, and we know that's not true because when we're nervous, we have sweaty palms, but maybe we also have sweaty palms when we're angry too. Or, maybe we can cry because we're laughing so much. So it's not always accurate. And then the next theory of emotion is the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory of emotion. So this one is a little bit more accurate. And it basically says that you've got the physiological, so you do have all those like signs and symptoms of an emotion, the beating heart, the talking fast, whatever, crying. But then you also have to worry about your cognitive interpretation of that. So you could be like tears leaking down your face, but only your brain can tell you, okay, am I happy that I'm crying or am I sad and I'm crying? So your brain kind of gets to help push that emotion through, if that makes sense. All right. I'm going to talk way faster now. The mediational theory of emotion. So this is Lazarus, and he basically says that whatever you initially interpret is probably what corresponding emotion is going to come up. So if you go, oh my God, I'm scared, you're probably going to have then the physiological signs of being scared and things like that. All right, expressing emotion. I feel like we already know how to express emotion. Basically, there is a question on the test that wants to know um, which types of emotions are universal and which ones are different, basically. So I think, like happy is always a smile no matter what culture it is. And sad is always a frown no matter what culture. Anger still looks like anger no matter what. But then as you kind of go along, shyness looks different in different cultures, and anxiety might look different in some cultures, things like that. All right. Now, this is chapter 9, human development. So the first thing they're going to talk about is Piaget. So this is found on page 358-ish is where it starts talking about human development, and Piaget is actually on page 368. There's like a little box down at the bottom that tells you all of these things: the pre-operational, the operational, and the concrete, things like that. So pre-operational is, it says children have a lack of conservation. So those of us that have kids or no kids, this is like your 2-year-olds. This is like a very young toddler to like school age. So with the pre-operational, they're very egocentric. It's all about them, and they have symbolic thinking. So they kind of will see a lady and think mom, even if it's not a picture of their mom, right? They just see a woman and think like, oh, she's probably a mom. Next one is his formal operations stage. Formal operations is 12 years old to adults, roughly. So this is like adolescence. This one is abstract reasoning, starts developing. So basically their brain's maturing and they can, understand things like metaphors. Then we've got Vygotsky. So Vygotsky, they talk about him on page 372, and he's got the zone of proximal development, which says there's a gap between what a child can do on their own and with help. So basically Vygotsky started the whole theory about, they call it scaffolding, or it's like bridging the knowledge gap. So if I have a 12-year-old that knows how to crack an egg, but doesn't know how to turn on the oven, to make scrambled eggs or whatever, then I can help foster that. Like I can show him, here's the dial to turn for this burner. Now you crack the egg. And then, that way it's more of a collaborative kind of education. All right, we need to look at you're going to need to know the 5 stages of grief, and you'll also need to know Kohlberg's moral reasoning, which is in a nice table on page 374. All right, so in the moral reasoning, he goes through 3 levels. There's pre-conventional, there's conventional, and there's post-conventional. So pre-conventional is most younger children. So this kind of deals with the incentives too. The right and wrong is based on rewards or punishment. So if they do something good, they get a reward. If they do something bad, they get punished. Basically, that's the age that they're learning. And hopefully by the time they're, 12, they already know right from wrong. So you don't have to do it forever. Although I'm learning with one of my teenagers, that is not the case. All right. Avoidant attachment. I always just think of it like the really sad stories of like Russian adoptions or something, these babies that have been in orphanages and then somebody will adopt them, but they have so much attachment issues, so many issues that they can't, they just don't know how to, be normal around their parents. So the avoidant attachment is when the child ignores the parent. So that's like if a baby's crying and you go to pick him up and hold him, it doesn't make any difference, and they would rather that you didn't pick them up to hold them, kind of thing. Okay. We've got parenting styles now. So that's on page 379, basically. That's when we talk about authoritative, authoritarian, and permissive. So this card is just dealing in permissive. And permissive means that, they kind of just let everything go. So there's little or no control, and there is a whole lot of affection. So it would be, I don't know what kind of mom that is, a helicopter mom or something, but basically no consequences for their actions, just lots of hugs and love. All right. Erickson's stages. So this is the identity versus role confusion. And I'm not sure if you guys watched the PowerPoint that I did on YouTube for this. This happens tremendously in adolescents, high school age kids, constantly. So this is kind of where all the gender role confusion starts coming in. And this is on page 381. There's a little table at the very top. And the identity versus role confusion is when they're challenging their sense of self, or they don't really know who they are yet. So they kind of are trying on other beliefs and other morals and things like that. So that's when you find yourself and your personal values. All right, personal fable. That's one that I love this card. No one can understand. It's true on so many levels. But basically, this is, everybody creates their own story about who they are, and they've got their selective memories, and all adolescents go through this age where no one understands me, even though they don't understand that they don't see a bigger picture, and that every single person has gone through, this same little burst of depression and burst of hormones. But the personal fable is kind of what they use to cloak their identity for a while. Okay, here's the stages of grief that you guys will need to know. So we've got denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. On the test, they're going to give you a scenario, and you will have to decide which stage of grief this is. So it's not as black and white as, what's the third stage of grief? It's not like that. It'll be a story about, a mom who lost something, or an animal that lost something. So you guys will really have to just use a little bit of critical thinking. So that way you can figure it out. So just know those inside and out. All right. Week 8, which was the personality stuff. That was so cool. First thing is personality type. So like type A personality, type B personality, hardy personality, type C for cautious. I don't know if they still use those terms as much as they did when I was in school, but I mean, I kind of grew up knowing who was type A, my brother, and who was type B, me, and stuff like that. So I'm not, to me, it doesn't need studying, but I don't know. You decide. All right, then Freud. So Freud was the psychosexual guy. So Freud believes in the id, ego, superego, right? So he says the id is the pleasure gratification, the superego is the moral conscience, and the ego is the balancer. So remember that picture of the iceberg or whatever that's like half above water and half underwater. And ego is at the top, superego is in the middle, and then the id is like everywhere else. And then Allport's trait theory. So he was the one that talked about like cardinal traits and primary traits, central traits, secondary traits. All of his good stuff is on page 476. All right, then Bandurus and his social cognition. So if you guys remember from before the midterm, Bandurus was the guy that did the experiment with that blow up clown doll. That like he put a kid and an adult in the room with this blow up doll, and the adult just like beat the snot out of that clown, and then the kid was watching, and then when they had the kid alone, they saw the kid repeating that same thing. So that's the same guy. His theory is all about reciprocal determinism. So that is essentially interaction between behavior, thoughts, and environment. So constantly, he says that your personality is constantly, I guess, going back and forth between the three, or wrapped up, rather. Okay, and then there's projective personality tests, which are the ones that I gave you guys in the week 8 email, if you remember. So that's like the Rorschach test, the Big Five, Myers-Briggs, the thematic apperception. So that's the one that had all the pictures. All right, stress. I feel like, again, we already know what stress is. We really don't need to study it. But you will need to know these 4 categories here. So you'll need to know the difference between conflicts, daily hassles, catastrophes, and major life events. So on the test, they're going to ask, again, scenario questions like, this lady is having this kind of day and then this happened. What kind of stressor is that? So you'll have to know enough about the different kinds of stressors to be able to kind of think critically about those. All right, types of conflict, same thing. On the test, they'll give you a scenario and you kind of have to figure out the approach, which is a win-win. Avoidance is a lose-lose. And approach avoidance, which is a win-lose. All right. Next is the general adaptation syndrome. So this is, trying to think of which page this one's on. Sorry, I'm going to go to my little handy dandy paper clips. So the general adaptation syndrome is the 3 stages of stress response, basically. So the first stage being the alarm stage. So that's when your body starts to release endocrine. So that's when your fear response is going to come. And then the resistance stage, which is, it says think endocrine fatigue, but basically you're starting to get real tired. And then the exhaustion stage. So in the book on page 544, it's one of those end of the chapter sections, but it's got a picture, like the graph of what this general adaptation syndrome looks like. And it talks a little bit about all 3 of these stages. Okay, coping with stress. There's basically just a couple of different ways. One is problem-based coping. One is emotion-focused coping, and then there are defense mechanisms. So the problem-based is fix it or change it. Emotion is going to be like we have to work to change how we look at it. And then defense mechanisms are not always healthy. I always think about kind of your body's response to trauma and how the defense mechanism for that is like to repress a memory. Obviously, that's not healthy. That's how you get multiple personalities. Okay, yay, my favorite. I'm so weird for loving abnormal psych, but I love abnormal psych. Does anybody else watch a whole lot of like serial killer documentaries and stuff like that? I freaking love that stuff. Oh my God. Okay. So you will need to know the 4 different, I guess, cues of abnormal behavior. The 4 there's 3 listed in the book, but in the PowerPoint, there's a 4th one added. Here's the most important ones that are on the test. I believe these 2 are. So it's a violation of social norms, and it's very culturally driven. What's abnormal in one society is not in another society. There is also distress is part of it. And dysfunction. So if it causes a lot of distress for that person, then it's probably abnormal. Okay. Biological theories on page 549. So that is kind of, I don't want to say boring. It's not boring, it's very interesting. But this is kind of the, not boring, what do I want to think? Simplified, maybe. The simpler abnormal issues that can be solved by psychoanalysis or, therapy and meds, things like that. So with the biological theory, they're basically saying that it has to do with genetics or an imbalance of hormones. So it is kind of your, I don't want to say your own fault, but it's your own problem. Mood disorders. Hooray. Before I go on to this next card, though, some things that are on the test that are not an index card. You'll need to know the different perspectives of the psychological theories, I guess. So for those, there are things such as the psychoanalytic perspective, the biomedical perspective, social learning perspective, and the behavioral perspective. So you'll need to know what each of those are too. And I don't believe that we have cards for all of them, but there are questions on the test about it. So, okay, mood disorders. And it talks about 2 mood disorders. So major depression and bipolar disorder. On page 552, it's got categories of major disorders as told in the DSM-5, which is the big giant psychological manual of brain problems, I guess. Dissociative disorders. So these are fun things like multiple personality disorder. There's which is now called the dissociative identity disorder. So it's now called DID, used to be multiple personality, and then dissociative fugue. There's also going to be questions, no note cards, on schizophrenia, and some somatic syndromes, I guess. So that's like hypochondria and Munchausen by proxy. So that's all, you know, conversion syndrome. It's all psychological, but it's also an illness and a mood disorder. So, okay, mental health therapies. Here are some things you will need to know about therapy types. Psychoanalytic therapy. So again, psychoanalytic is Freud. And Freud used free association and just wanted you to talk about whatever came to mind. And then he would find, he'd like fix on to one specific thing, like, oh, she crinkled her eyebrow when she talked about her mother, so she must have an issue with her mother. Let's dig deeper into that kind of thing, which reminds me of Scientology, honestly. That's the way that they kind of do their things too. Humanistic therapies. Hopefully we all see or have seen or will see, if we ever need a therapist, a humanistic one, because they deal with the empathy. They're very genuine. They accept you for who you are. There's no judgment from them. So I feel like the psychoanalytic is very, very much well, the analytic part of your brain, and then humanistic is more of that kind of nurturing side of your brain. Behavior therapies. So I will never do this. This scares me so bad. Systematic desensitization. So this is like if you have phobias. So if you have a total irrational fear of flying, then they will take little babies, like, let's practice walking to the stairs of this airplane. And they'll keep doing that and then go a step further the next time. Now let's walk down the aisle of an airplane. Now let's sit in the airplane. And now imagine it taking off, kind of thing. So instead of just kind of throwing you into the fire, they make you walk across hot coals before you get to the fire, I guess. It just seems horrible to me. All right, and cognitive therapies, and these are pretty common nowadays. In cognitive therapies, it says challenging irrational beliefs, but basically they want you to think about it and kind of do the Freud thing on your own. So they'll ask maybe one question, and then as you were answering it, they want you to think like, wait a minute, why did I answer that way? And what was I really thinking? And things like that. So here's other things on the test. You will need to know what rational emotive therapy is. You will need to know.
Could you repeat that? Rational what?
Emotive. Like emotion, emotive therapy. I talked about moral reasoning, and we talked about theories of emotion. I'm going to peek at your test really fast to make sure we covered it all. Please remember that this test is open book, open notes. You can use note cards, you can, use the study guide, you can print out a PowerPoint, you can watch the videos, you could do whatever. So it should be fairly straightforward. There are about 50 questions on this test. You will have 2 days to take it. You'll need to know what an Oedipal and Electra complex are. So that's Freud again. So the Oedipus complex and the Electra complex are basically the exact same complex, just focused on different parents. Okay, really, honestly, I think that covered everything. Yes, it did. I feel good about this. This covered everything. And you guys have a test starting tonight, also on chapters 11 through 14. It's a little quiz. I think it's like maybe 20 questions. It starts tonight, and I am not turning it off until Friday, so you get an extra day to do this. And again, that one is open book, open notes, open everything as well. You can email me during the test if you don't understand a question or have a comment or anything like that. And then for next week, all finals start Monday the 23rd. And my final starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then you will have until Wednesday morning at 9. You will not get a final grade shown at the end of the test. Grades will be posted online, I believe, at 5 p.m. So the registrar has to get in there and do a bunch of paperwork before we can post our final grades. So if you have questions about, can you give me a thumbs up or thumbs down on how I did on the test, I will totally answer so you don't have to live in stress for days. Are there any questions about anything?
Will you give us a few thumbs up if we did really, really good?
Yes, I will. Wink, wink.
Okay, wink, wink.
Anything else, you guys? You guys are rock stars. Thank you so much. I do not have a lot of nice people in one of my classes, and you guys are like the nicest people. So thank you for being so great and nice. I love it. Yay. And seriously, email me with any questions. I will just live by my email for the next 2 weeks. Okay?
Thank you so much, Melissa.
Oh, thanks, you guys. Good luck.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.